we have a little extra bonus code here that we don't need, which is that we are still adding it to state manually and removing it from state manually whenever we add and remove posts. So now we can just delete all that code that we just wrote. Now, you might say, like, why wouldn't I always want this? It all really depends, right? If this is, it could be that you might only want to fetch this data once. You might not want to, like, necessarily subscribe to every change. Like, those count as queries. You might choose to just fetch it once and have it and store it. This is, it all depends on your use case. I would say subscribing is fine. It does, like, because things can come in basically streaming, it does provide some state management challenges that we'll face later. But it's really up to you, right? If you don't necessarily want to fetch the data all the time, you can fetch it once. You can subscribe to the changes. Either one of them, Firebase allows you to do both, which is pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and delete some code. So the first thing is in handle create, get rid of this. I don't need the reference to the document since I'm replacing all the state. I don't need to format that. I don't need to set state anymore. I can basically slim it down to a one-liner, which is take the post, add the post to Firestore. Firestore will then eventually, the subscription will update stuff. Handle remove. Again, that's really all that needs to happen is change the data store. The data store will tell the application that everything has changed and it should all work. We have more code to remove, but let's start with this right now. Cool. Adding works. Removing works still for both of them. The nice thing now, too, is theoretically, we don't need to actually we don't need to communicate this all the way back up to the application component. Before, because the application component held on to the state and we had to modify it in the application component, we basically passed those functions down to add post and to the post itself to remove it, and then let it call back up to modify the application state. But now because Firebase is in control of it, we don't need to do that anymore. So we can probably even get rid of these two methods completely and just put them where we need them. So let's go ahead and do that. So for instance, we can take this functionality right here. We can go into the post itself. And we could say, I'm going to go ahead and make a post ref because I know that the next thing we're going to do is an update where I'm going to want to change the number of stars on one as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to that reference so I don't need to write it twice. Nope. So we'll have the post ref, and then we'll have const remove. That'll just be postref.delete. And instead of this down here, we'll simply say on click, just remove it. This star button, I'm about to let you implement update in a second, so just to point it out, stars right here. So we have the ability to remove. We don't need that on remove anymore, which means we don't need it here as well. We actually don't even need on create anymore because we can actually go into the add post itself. Instead of calling on create, we can say Firestore. Let's see that I imported the right one. Yep. Just add it right here. We don't need to pass in onCreate anymore. Which means we can remove these two. And remove these two methods. Awesome. Let's go. I deleted a lot of code. So let's go verify that things work. They show up on both. I can delete them on both, right? So it's a lot less code once we can just use Firebase, modify the database, and have Firebase tell the application component what's going on, right? So we're still passing the data down, but now because we don't necessarily need to pass every function down, and we'll see other ways that we can actually make this really useful as well, because we're still passing the data through. But at the end of this workshop, we're going to have some strategies for creating providers and contexts and higher order components, so we don't even necessarily need to do that. But right now, we can at least have the actions in place.